to the experiment, we are going to discuss about the friction. As you know, friction is dependent on different factors. When two objects are in contact with each other, the friction coefficient between these two objects is an effective parameter on the friction force which they will act on each other actually. And also the other effective parameter is the vertical load on the object, or the normal force actually on the moving object toward the other object. In this experiment we have a special equipment to show how we can see these actually effect of these parameters on the friction force. Okay, let's see what are the main components of the experimental setup for this experiment. Here in this experiment we have a device which we call the BMM1511, which is a device to measure the friction actually precisely. The component of this experiment is we have a winch drum to measure the force actually, the force which or the friction force. We have friction object, which is as you can see here, it has two sides. Each side, the one side of that is felt, the other side is brass. And also we have friction plate, which we have different friction plate. We have felt, we have glass. The other important components for this experiment are different weights, as you can see here. Each one of them are 0.5 Newton. Now we are going to run the experiment. Before you run the experiment or turn on the motor, you need to make sure that you have already made zero the drum. You need to also to check that the toe is not in contact with the rack, as you can see here. So it should be between these two stops actually, and this moving object shouldn't touch the rack during its travel. After you make sure everything is okay, you have selected right surfaces, brass for moving object, and for plate we have also felt. After you make sure, and also after this we may add load on top of the moving object, 0.5 Newton, 2 of them 1 Newton, and so on. After that you need to run, but again make sure, no I have touched this, so again I should make it 0. So now everything is ready. Let's turn on the motor and see the how the object moves, and also we need to read the force here on the drum actually. So let's turn on the motor. You can see it moves. Due to the friction between these two surfaces, the force here in the drum will change. We need to be careful this moving object does not reach its end trowel. Turn it off. Now we are going to add force on top of the object, or we are going to increase the vertical load on the moving object actually. So to do that, we need to bring back the moving object actually, put the moving object at its place, bring back the rack, make this 0 hour. It should be actually the last part, and add different loads. Now we are going to add 0.5 Newton vertical load and put that on the top of the moving object. To make the travel of the rack actually, you can use some lubricant actually in these two parts to make the moving of the rack smoother and to improve the accuracy of our measurement actually. And also make sure anytime you run the experiment, this should be on 0. The drum should be on 0 actually. Now we run for this experiment. We have just changed the load on the top of the moving object. Now let's see how much will be force this time. As you can see here, the load is much higher than previous. Turn off the motor. As you can see here, this time it is 0.4, actually 0.4 something, between 0.4 and 0.45 actually is the value in the range drop. We need to repeat this experiment with different loads. Based on the lab sheet actually, we need to run this experiment with different normal forces. 1 Newton, it means we need to put 12 these weights actually on the top of the moving object. 1.5 Newton, 2.5 Newton, 3 Newton, 3.5 and 4 Newtons are the vertical load or the normal forces which we are going to apply on top of this moving object. And for each one of them, we need to measure this force, the friction force between these two surfaces. And for each surfaces, actually, we need to repeat this experiment. In this one, which you have already seen the video, we had felt for the moving object, the surface of the moving object is felt, and also the surface of the plate is felt. After we have done with all of the forces and we have measured or we have recorded the force on the drum actually, we need to change the moving object actually. We need to substitute this. Here you can see PVC or glass. We can substitute this with glass. A new surface for the plate, and again we have the felt for this surface. Again, we need to run the experiment with same procedure like what we had for the felts for the plate as well. Again, we need to run the experiment, and record the value on the drum actually. So this is the procedure we need to do this project. Then for these new surfaces actually, we again need to add loads similar to the previous surfaces. So what we have here in this experiment, we have 3 experiments actually, and for each experiment the surfaces will change, the friction plate actually will change. We will have, for the first experiment, the friction plate actually is the felt. For the second one we have PVC, we will put this as a friction plate, and for the last one we will use glass as a friction plate. And for each one of these surfaces we will add different loads from 1 Newton to 4 Newton, and with a 0.5 Newton increment actually. Then we will measure the force or the friction force here in the drum for each one of those steps. Then finally you need to come out with a graph. You need to plot the graph of friction force versus normal force for all of these experiments. So you will have one graph for each surface actually. You need to come out with 3 graphs: vertical load and the friction force. Vertical load, which we have here, 0.5, 1 Newton, 1.5 Newton, 2 Newton until 4 Newtons, and and also the force which we record by drum actually. Secondly, you need to show a sample calculation for each experiment, and also you need to explain the consequences of the force gauge when it is not parallel to the surface of the tow platform while performing the experiment. You need to come out with the reason, however, I already told you, why we need to add lubricant to these parts actually, and you need to explain about that. And also finally, you need to discuss about the factors or possible factor which may cause error in our measurement actually. Thank you very much for watching the video.